Hi everyone, this is Constellations here. So I thought I'll take a break from Thoma and do a guide on Polar Star because that's the new weapon that's coming in version 2.2. And obviously Childe is the best character to use it because of how it's designed, requiring you to do normal attack, charge attack, elemental skill, and elemental burst to get a full maximum number of 4 stacks. So I'll briefly go through the weapon and how it works shortly after this. So first off, what we'll see here is pretty standard. This is the Childe base stats. Then we have the Polar Star and its effect. We're going to do level 1990. Okay, so first off, this bow gives you a mini stringless effect. Half the effect of stringless at R1 and also half at stringless R5 versus Polar Star R5. So elemental skill and elemental burst damage increased by 12% instead of 24% at stringless. At R5 it's 24%. Now what is interesting is this portion here where after your normal attack, charge attack, elemental skill, elemental burst hits an opponent, you get 1 stack. When you have 4 stats, you get 10, 20, 30, 48% attack. An additional 8% for getting all 4 stats basically. This is R1. At R5, the effect is doubled. So you get 20, 40, 60, 96% attack. So at first glance, this weapon is definitely good for Childe. Not so much for Ganyu really. For Ganyu, I'll do that as the last closing item for the point on Ganyu. Okay. So for the purpose of comparison, I have done R1 versus R5 on 4pc Shimenawa, and also R1 versus R5 on HOD, Heart of Death, which is the Hydro set. So naturally, in this video, I will also compare Shime versus Shimenawa's Reminiscence versus the Heart of Death. Okay. So Goblet Mister is very straightforward. We are not going to do any artifact permutation per se here. It's going to be attack percent with Hydro Cup and crit damage helmet. Obviously, right, because we are using a crit rate bow. Okay. So pretty standard stuff. Always have 5 artifact rolls remaining. 5 rolls that can go wrong, which is about 1 roll per artifact. So it's pretty min-max, honestly speaking. And ER wise, we have 39.2% for Shime and 28% for HOD. 28% is the bare minimum if we manage to get ER percentage on every base roll on all the artifacts without having to do any upgrades into it. Okay. 39.2% is in the case when we need 2 upgrades. This is because of how Shimenawa's work, where you lose 15 energy, so we are trying to cover that. But I'll talk more about this in the sections later. I wanted to quickly run through the concept of the figures here. So obviously I have different attack values based on whether or not we have 1 to 4 stats. Shimenawa already factored in the attack. You see here 4pc HOD has lesser attack because it loses the 18% attack that 2pc Shimenawa provides. And damage sources, we have all the relevant damage sources here. Shimenawa, although I put 50 here, no worries. We are not actually using it in the formula, so it doesn't matter. In fact, I could have made my life easier and just include everything and put 0 on the irrelevant portion. So anyway, that's on me. But no worries, the calculation is still correct. Okay. Polar Star skill and burst buff 12 and 24. The 12 and 24 that I talk about R1 and R5. Okay. I'm not going to put out this portion, this is just a FYI. Okay, so rotation wise, it's going to be very simple in terms of the setup. But before I talk about that, I just wanted to show the figures. You'll see naturally that the 4pc HOD will have a better burst damage since it has 15% hydro damage versus Shimenawa, which mainly buffs your normal charge attacks. If you look at the N1C combo as well as the N3C combo, you'll notice that the HOD will do lesser damage than Shimenawa. Okay, and you have the retype damage, retype slash, the effect that procs every 1.5 seconds, that also does slightly more damage on HOD as opposed to Shimenawa. So how to understand this portion here? Basically, I think I should talk about the setup first. Okay. So the setup, there are 6 different sections that I'll talk about here. Setup to get all the 4 stats ASAP. Childe attack combo rotations. how many attack combo rotations should we do, and how many seconds of the melee stance should we be in. And how important is ER for a Polar Star using Childe? 4p Shimenawa versus 4pc HOD, Polar Star R1 versus R5, and of course what we're gonna do next. It'll still be about Polar Star. Okay, so first off, it's very straightforward. Use your range burst followed by your elemental skill, because the elemental skill on the initial cast, when you switch to melee stance, it actually does a aura type of damage, AoE damage around him. So that is the elemental skill, and that will give you the stack. And then do your M1C combo, M1C meaning normal attack and followed immediately by a charge attack. This way, you get all 4 stats immediately. Almost immediately anyway, because the range burst will still take about 1 second to cast. So this gives you all the stats. In fact, if I factor in the M1C combo to set up, theoretically speaking, no, it's okay. Yeah, sorry, I was just thinking whether or not I should reduce some time on the melee stance because of the range burst, but it doesn't matter. Okay, so after this setup, and the reason why we're using range burst and not melee burst is because we want to make good use of the range burst effect, where it helps you gain energy back. You get 20 energy, which will make the burst a lot more spammable. And you do need to spam his burst, because using his burst to hit an enemy is one of the way to get a stack. So you want it to be happening more frequently than not. Alright, so this is how you do the setup. And with that, I'll talk about the attack combo rotations before we go back to the figures. So I'm not going to go into the CD time in his rotations, we'll just focus on the DPS time frame. So 10 seconds is optimal for Shimenawa, because Shimenawa's effects last for 10 seconds. HOD lasts for 15 seconds, but I also recommend going for 12 seconds for HOD, since the Polar Star stat lasts 12 seconds each. So right after your burst hits an opponent, the 12 second timer starts. And the good thing is that it works based on you hitting on opponent instead of you casting, because you casting versus you hitting an opponent, there is always about 1 second difference, especially for 5-star characters. So, and 12 seconds at C0 is actually optimal for the cooldown as well. If you understand how Childe works, right? The longer you are in his melee stance, the longer the cooldown will be. Okay, so that's why there are optimal breakpoints on that. I'm not going to go into that in detail per se. You can check out those in all the existing guides that's already been there for almost a year, because Childe has almost been out. Almost a year? 12 months? So sorry, 11 months? Yeah, he was on the 1.1 banner, right? I might be wrong, Sorry, I think it's 10 months, because when I first started this game, Genshin, the Childe banner was there. Yeah, so it's 10 months. Almost 11 months. 10.5, okay? 10.5. Alright, but that's not important. The important thing here is Childe Polar Star. You have 2 options. You can go 10 seconds melee stance rotation or 12 seconds melee stance rotation. Okay? Between these two, basically, the moment you enter your melee stance, you can go M1C to set up your 4 stacks of Polar Star, followed by 4 N3C with dash cancels being in between each string. So total 5 strings here, including M1C. Use dash to cancel your animation, and trigger your N3C again. Dash cancel, trigger N3C, dash cancel, trigger NC, so on and so forth. By the time you do this combo, M1C plus 4 N3C, it will be about 10 seconds. And if you're doing 12 seconds, then it will be 1 additional N3C combo. N3C meaning 3 normal attacks followed by a charge attack. Okay. So the step on Polar Star requires your burst to hit enemy and last for 12 seconds. So this is the reason why we're going for 12 second stance instead of 15, although HOD lasts for 15 seconds. I already covered this. Thundering Pulse will actually require a different attack string, which I will share when we cover Thundering Pulse in weapon comparison. I can't possibly do weapon comparison in this video as well. I will do weapon comparison as the next video, and I believe that will have even more value to you guys, the viewers, because then you can see from the math whether or not it's worthwhile to go for Polar Star R1 even. Alright, now that I have covered how to set up his how to set up so that you have the perfect combo to get your 4 stats ASAP, and how to do the Childe attack combo, in terms of the rotations and the string, the attack string to contour. Now let's look at the damage figures. Yeah. So we have the entry N1C here. This is all part of setup. This plus this are all part of your setup. By the time you finish this, you do around this amount of damage, you would be at 4 stats. And then the subsequent N3C combos will be at its optimal damage. You can also go N2C, but N2C is very costly on stamina. You may run out of stamina, which is why I'm using N3C here. Okay. And read type slash, it will trigger every 1.5 seconds, and since you use the range burst, it will apply read type onto the opponent, which means that the moment you do your stance, you can already the moment you go into your stance and you attack, you can trigger the read type slash. So this is the figure for level 9 elemental skill with level 9 burst. Very non-wheel territory, very doable, especially since Childe has been out for so long, and this is like his second rerun banner, which is the third banner in total. So the setup prior to melee stance, you do about a 41. Wait, this doesn't sound right. Okay. This is set up prior to the melee stance, not set up prior to getting 4 stats. So before you even enter your melee stance, you will deal this amount of damage. And if we use 10 seconds melee, we will trigger 7 read type slashes. Because remember, I said that the first attack will trigger read type slash because your range burst would apply read type to your opponent. So these are the damage figures. So as you can see here, Shime does now do slightly better. I'll talk about that in more detail. Likewise on R5 as well, R5 versus R5. So remember this R1 Shime, R5 Shime, R1 HOD, R5 HOD. So total DPS in one 10-second DPS cloud of rotation is 217k at R1 on Shime. If you're using HOD, you get about 263k if I round up. Then this is 271 actually. Okay, but never mind. 12 seconds melee, you get 9 read type slashes. And these are the damage figures. Okay, I don't want to go through them in too much detail. You guys can always pause it at any time. And these are the level 12 burst figures, level 12 ally skill figures, all the related combo. The total damage is here, 10 seconds, and total DPS is here. 12 seconds is this too. This is pure melee. This includes the setup, the burst, as well as the initial damage from switching to the melee stance mode, and you have all the different percentage figures here, which I will cover shortly. But before I cover that, first let's talk about how important ER is for Polar Star Childe. The stack on Polar Star requires your burst to hit an enemy and last for 12 seconds. But if I include his elemental skill cooldown before I start the next rotation, we have around 25 seconds, assuming you're doing a 12-second melee stance. So it's actually about 26 seconds, but I reduce 1 second for the second burst cast time, meaning that I factor in that when your elemental skill still has 1 second cooldown remaining, you can already cast your elemental burst in order to have your rotation as fast as possible. So 25 seconds to get back 40 energy. I know his burst is 60 energy, but the range will refund you 20 energy. So you just need to get back 40 energy, or 55 energy if you're on Shimenawa, because Shimenawa is going to reduce your energy by 15. That 20 energy that you just get back from the burst, it will get reduced by 15. So 128 ER should be sufficient to get 40 energy in 25 seconds, but Shime will require more, which is the reason why I use 39.2 as my estimation. Okay, with Raiden you may not even require ER. I can't say for sure until I test it out. And yes, I know the characters are available, but I have not tested it yet. A bit apologetic to my Childe, but my Childe hasn't really been used a lot per se, because there's just too many characters that I have. And how should I put it? He's been around for almost a year. I'm more interested in the newer characters as of now, for now, anyway. Okay, so this is what I am saying. You may need 128 ER and 139 on Shime. With Rider, you may not even need it, but it has to be tested to be sure. But ER is important for Polar Star, just to make sure that by the time your elemental skill is off cooldown, you should have your burst ready to cast. It will be a great waste if you don't have your burst ready to cast on the second rotation. If you are only able to cast it once every 2 rotations, that's a great waste. You definitely would need more ER in that kind of situation. Okay, so 4-piece Shimenawa versus 4-piece HOD. Let's talk about the interesting stuff now. Now we already covered how Polar Star works, what's the best rotation to use, the attach string to use, etc. Now, if I factor in higher ER, by the way, the Polar Star actually requires the same type of typical attach string versus other weapons other than Thundering Pulse. The only difference is that you want to do a M1C first to stack up your 4 stacks. That's it. It's pretty straightforward if you're a long-time chart user. Okay, now, so even if I factor in higher ER required on 4-piece Shimenawa, 139 versus 128, Shime still does slightly better damage, 3% at R1, 3% better than 4-piece HOD for the exact same setup, except for ER having higher and crit damage being lower. Okay, and 2.2% at R5. And the reason why is because Shime does slightly worse at R5, since R5 gives you a lot of attack percent, thus the 2-piece effect, the 18% attack from Shime has a diminishing effect. And thus the reason for the drop in the percentage. But 3% and 2.2% really is not much. And if you are paired with Raiden, Childe should not require any upgrades into ER, just base ER rolls should be sufficient. That would mean that Shime will do even better. If you don't need to get 139 ER, you only need 128 ER on Shime. Shime will do 6.5% better than 4-piece HOD and 5.6% better at R5. R1 and R5. But the silver lining is, if you already have a good 4-piece HOD for Childe, you don't need to farm for Shime specifically. Unless, like me, while trying to min-max Raiden's artifacts, you get good Shime artifacts, then you can consider using Shime. Personally, I am using a Shime set, and in fact the Shime set is almost like the stats I have in this map. Higher crit damage in fact. But it's also partly because I'm not very lucky with 4-piece HOD, so that's the reason why. But I do want to state one point here that's not in these stats here, so please listen to me. Farming these 2 domains, between the HOD / Blizzard Strayer domain versus the Emblem and Shime domain, I personally feel that the Emblem domain is better in the sense that the Emblem domain is a very good general set. The Emblem set is a very good general set. So if you farm for Emblem and in the meantime you get Shime, then those Shime can be placed to good use in this manner. So it's not a bad idea to farm for Shime / Emblem, because Emblem is really good on many characters. As a reference, for example, Beidou, Xianling, Xingqiu, they can all use Emblem and receive a boost. I also receive a boost when I change my Xingqiu's gear from 4-piece Noblesse to 4-piece Emblem. And if you saw my previous video on Thoma, right? Thoma Sub DPS Math Guide 1, you'll see that I was comparing Xingqiu and was saying that my Xingqiu's Emblem set is not even my best Emblem set. He's using my 3rd best Emblem set. So even with that, he's still dealing better damage than he did when I was using his 4-piece Noblesse. So Emblem is actually a very good set, very good domain to farm for. And Shime coming with it means you get a chance to make use of Shime in such a manner. Okay? But like I said, if you already have 4-piece HOD, then don't need to farm for Shime specifically. For me, I am using Shime because that's my best option. Okay? So pretty straightforward on the artifact portion. The Shime definitely does better. It's just that if you have a good 4-piece, then the percentage difference really depends on whether this is a percentage difference that's big enough for you, whether it matters enough for you. Okay, 3% and 6.5%. 3% is in the event where you need more energy because of Shimenawa's reducing 15 energy that effect. Or if you pair with Raiden, you manage your energy well, you have some base ER rolls, I don't think you will need to invest in ER per se, and you should be able to get higher crit damage with that, and that will give you a even better result than 4-piece HOD. It's double the benefit. Okay. Now let's talk about the most important part about this Polar Star, which is Polar Star R1 versus R5. So R1 to R5 is 17% difference with Shime, 18% difference with HOD. I'll say it's a little on the low side. For reference, right, Thundering Pulse on Yoimiya is about 22% when you go from R1 to R5, and Engulfing is 24% when you go from R1 to R5. So 17/18% is definitely lower than 22 and 24. But it's still better than Everlasting Moonglow. Everlasting Moonglow is 15 to 16% at C0 and 11% at C1. Absolutely terrible at C1, by the way. 11% is very, very terrible for you to spend on weapon to go from R1 to R5, especially considering the amount required, amount of pools required. So I'll say it's up to viewer to decide if this boost, 17 or 18%, is something you're willing to spend on. Remember, always spend within your means, okay? Oh, by the way, if Polar Stars aesthetics is something that you like to begin with, just go for it. I always say this, play what you like, pull for what you like. Okay, next video. If I look at the damage figures alone, Polar Star is actually pretty nice. I mean, just a recap, right? 12 seconds, let's say we use level 9 skill, because level 12 is... Level 12 burst and level 12 ally skill is basically a wheel territory. You need C5 for that. So if I look at level 9, that's still not too bad. In 10 seconds, we will do 229k. Not too bad, not too bad. I mean, it's not super broken, but it's not bad. For reference, a Ganyu can do about 40 plus k on her charge attack without any reactions. So every charge attack is 2 seconds. So this is about on par. Right? It's almost on par. Of course, there are a lot of other things like how consistent Ganyu is and how easy it is to just land a charge attack every 2 seconds. There's AoE versus this scenario in Chart where he's melee and you need to make sure that there are mods for you to hit, etc, etc, etc. Okay? Anyway, it's still pretty nice, these damage figures. But I'll do a conclusion of whether to pull or skip for this weapon, Polar Star, after doing a weapon comparison against Thundering Pulse, Skyward, and Rust. And that I should be able to churn it out tomorrow, the one day before we get the... I can't remember, the chart banner is coming on Tuesday or Wednesday, but it should give you guys sufficient time to check out and make your decision before the Polar Star is released. Okay? Oh, right, one final note on Ganyu. So for this weapon, right, technically speaking, if you are using a melt Ganyu, you can use this weapon by using the normal attack as like a filler between your ICD per se. But it's still not very intuitive, it's a less intuitive playstyle, I don't like it, personally. It's doable, but let me put it this way, okay? Let me put it this way. Ganyu rerun banner will definitely be coming, right? It's what everyone is expecting, and it just makes a lot more sense if you think about history, etc. So why not wait until the Ganyu banner to pull for a 5-star weapon? Because Amo's bow is just really good on her. I don't see why you need to choose a weapon here where the mechanic is not that intuitive and it locks you into a melt playstyle. It locks you into a situation where you need to make sure that you only do your charge attack every 2.5 seconds instead of 2 seconds, for example. So, okay, aesthetics wise it's not bad, but then again, Ganyu looks really good with Amo's bow as well. But looks is subjective, so that's that. But I would recommend if you are using Ganyu and you are thinking of pulling this weapon when you don't have a 5-star weapon, my advice is still wait for the Ganyu rerun banner to happen. For all you know, MiHoYo may come out with a new 5-star weapon specifically designed for Ganyu that is even better than Amo's bow. Right? That's one thing to consider. So personally, that's what I would do. I wouldn't pull this weapon for Ganyu. This weapon is obviously designed for Chao. I mean, I thought Thundering Pulse was a crazy good weapon, and I actually put a R1 Thundering Pulse for him, while my Yoimiya has a R5. And I switch between the two whenever required. The problem now is they are coming out with such a bow in such a short time from the Yoimiya banner. So yeah, I'm very interested in doing the weapon comparison against Thundering Pulse just to see whether or not it's worthwhile for me to pull for a Polar Star. But I am leaning towards not pulling right now, even before doing the math, because like I said, I want to cut down on my spending. on Genshin. That's one. Number two, I really don't think that the Polar Star would be significantly better than Thundering Pulse, but I don't want to lay any conclusions until I do the math, because both of them look equally imba in terms of the stats. Just looking at the stats and the effects. So anyway, thanks everyone for watching. If you like the content, remember the video and click subscribe for more. Next video, I'll do the weapon comparison. In the interest of time, I'll just focus on these three weapons: Thundering Pulse, Skyward, and Rust. Okay. Right. Oh right. If you sorry, I think I already said it, but please remember to subscribe if you like the video. Okay. Bye. Thanks for watching.